Welcome back to the MartiniWorks Podcast. I am your host, Alex, with Dakota and Taller Gels.
Let's go.
Brian, welcome back to the podcast, sir. How are you?
I'm great, man. Thank you for having me.
If you guys and gals don't know, a long time ago in a land far, far away, the OG podcast crew will know. We started this thing in a bedroom at my house.
The OG people.
The OG people. The entire business actually started in a 12 by 12 foot bedroom. And Brian, you were actually one of our very, very first episodes. Do you remember that?
Yeah, it was great. We drank some beers.
Yeah.
There were cats.
There were
Cat
cats.
was hanging out with me. That was pretty chill.
Yeah.
That was good. It was at your house. Nice.
We spent some time talking about Whistling Diesel. Life was a whole different world back then.
Yeah.
2022 is wild.
It was wild. This is nice though. This place is great. As much as I like hanging out at your house, it's pretty great. It's pretty great.
It was a very professional business meeting.
It was
Excuse
good.
me, Brian. Please come to our house. Please dodge the cats. Take off your shoes and come do a podcast.
I
with
mean,
us.
I really enjoyed it, but
That's awesome. Well,
this is great.
Welcome back, though, guys and gals. If you guys are looking for car parts, mod your car over at MartiniWorks.com. And if you need help with getting your parts financed, we do have a firm and Catapult on the website to help you break it into monthly payments between now and obviously tax season time, because builds never rest. With that being said, Dakota, what are we talking about in the first segment today?
Yeah, so both you guys have been over across the pond, as they say, over in Japan land, right? I've never been. So it's expensive to get over there, and I was curious your guys' thoughts. Is it worth it as a car enthusiast to go to Japan? Does it
Yes.
live up to the hype? Okay, well, that's answered, so we can... that was a great podcast.
Thanks for coming, actually.
Really appreciate Brian coming on. And no, going in a little bit more depth, like... I feel like a lot of people I've talked to, they, saved up for years and they plan this out because you want to go for, at least probably 10 days or so the first time you go if you can. What are some tips, advice?
Brian, you're the pro,
Yeah,
man.
I
You're
mean-
there every Sunday.
I think if you like anything, right? If you like anything, there's something that you aspire to do or go. If you're big into snowboarding, I mean, most people are like, I want to go to Vail. I want to go to whatever. This is that for Gran Turismo generation car people, very specifically, right? So it's incredible. There's so much to do and see. Once you get there, you realize that there's like so much more than just car stuff that you probably want to do. Right. And most people end up saying, I wish I would have stayed a little bit longer, or it develops into this thing where immediately like, well, next time.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you've already committed to your second trip. But definitely stay near a train station. I think make things a lot easier for people, unless you're planning on renting a car. And if you are planning on renting a car, be smart about what you rent, I think is another one. It's totally cool to just get a normal rental car.
Right.
Oh my God, I got the smallest one I could possibly
if
get. It was the best decision of my life.
I hear from a lot of people that they went over there and they rented whatever, an S15 or something from some place.
Sheesh, all right.
And they make it 900 yards out of the parking lot, and something happens to the car.
Oh, no.
And then they don't have a car for the rest of the trip. So, one piece of advice I would give is, if you're going for a week and you are planning on driving around, like, get a normal rental car. And if you want to rent something for the day to drive around, that's maybe more doable. But I wouldn't go to like a random tourist trap specific car rental place expecting to get something that's super good and reliable that you're going to drive around in.
That's a really good tip.
Because
Toyota car rental has been like my go-to every single time, because it's super easy and they're always located right next to train stations. Like any sort of major like bullet train in Japan, if you get out of the actual train station, there's almost always a Toyota rent-a-car like right across the street. And so that was always super easy for me. It's what got me from Fukushima to Osaka to Kyoto back to Tokyo. And anytime I needed to pick up or drop off a car, it was like 15 minutes to get something.
Yeah, so if you have a schedule, you reliably want to get stuff done, just get a reliable car.
Don't get a fun car. Get boring cars.
Yeah, I mean,
that
like,
have fun.
Yeah.
fun cars are fine, but if it's your only car for the whole trip,
I get it.
when it breaks, they're just going to give you a boring car, and you're going to pay the cost of the fun car for the rest of the trip anyhow. So just skip that.
If you had to boil it down, obviously I think when people think about Tokyo, car people, I always think natural gravitation, people like Daikoku, go to the Daikoku PA. But in your opinion, you've been there 9 million times. What do you think is like you put it at the top of the list of what somebody as a car person would want to do when they get to Japan? Where should they go?
Yeah, I mean, Daikoku's a bucket list for sure, right? I mean, if you have a car, drive there. Don't Uber there, and don't take a cab because you're not getting back out of that place. It's a pain, right? But I mean, it is cool. It's worth seeing one time. I don't really go back there anymore. I feel like I've been there, so there's other cooler PAs and stuff like that. I mean, for me, like personally, Nismo Omori Factory is cool.
So cool.
You know, generally you get a chance to see some of the heritage cars and stuff that are there. That to me is cool and interesting and important. I like that a lot. One that is always on my list is A Pit Super Auto Box.
Yes.
That place is great. Incredible bookstore. I usually wrap up my trip by stopping there before I go to the airport. It's a great place to get last minute books, souvenirs, gifts, hang out for a little bit. Place is really cool. There's a motorcycle shop next door that's pretty interesting. So that, I think, to me is like a definitely really good stop. And then, man, if you can make it out there, you know, going to Fuji Speedway Hotel has the History Museum, the Racing Museum. If there's events that you can go to, like, you know, a drift event or a, you know, GT race or time attack, whatever you can go see automotive wise is definitely pretty cool. They run a lot of that stuff year round, so it's worth it if you can get in there. And I guess a lot of this depends on what time of year, you know, you're traveling to.
Is it easy to get around those things, like only knowing English, or do you gotta know a bit of
Yeah,
Japanese?
for sure. Honestly, that's a big question we get from a lot of our customers that want to go over there is like, how hard is it going to be to communicate with people? And what I've personally found in my experience is if you're in like a metro area, most people want to speak English to you. You know, they're also trying to learn English. So, you know, if I go into a Starbucks, even if I want to speak, well, Dustin and I, you know, we go to these restaurants and these different places, and Dustin's actively trying to learn Japanese. You know, he spends a lot of time trying to speak it at home. And then when we go to Japan, obviously he wants to speak to people in Japanese. And a lot of times people are kind of like trying to speak to him in English because they're trying, you know, they're trying to do the same thing. They're like, when am I going to see another, you know, American dude that speaks English? I want to speak to him in English kind of thing. And that can kind of be a funny thing. But a lot of people will speak to you in English. And also, you know, things like Apple Maps or Google Maps work really well in metro areas. Like, it's not all, you know, just Japanese writing. You'll see like English characters and stuff like that. So you can recognize, you know, what some of the roads are and what some of the exits are and that kind of stuff, which I think makes it a lot easier for moving around in that sense.
I used to have this was like the biggest thing I learned, and I've only been over there a couple times now, but the number one mistake I made the first time going was like rushing onto a train because I feared that I was going to miss it, only to find out that, you know, trains come by like every 5 minutes typically, especially in like the populated areas. Because sometimes you'll get up to a station or, you know, one of the sections and you're not quite sure. Like some of the things line up, but then there's express trains, and then there's special express trains, and then there's trains where it's only for like, you know, there's certain cars that are only specific for like women or like pregnant. And you start, and you start like, oh my God, do I have to get in this one or do I have to wait? Do I have to get in? And you start to like, I'll just get in there and hopefully it's the right one. And 9 times out of 10, it's the wrong one. A lot of times Google Maps is really good at saying, here's the exact place you need to be. Here's what it looks like. But then it'll tell you when the next one is coming. It'll be like another one coming in 5 minutes, which I think is nice because every once in a while you'll have a train that'll show up and it's running multiple routes on the same thing. And you might confuse yourself and jump past the place that you're supposed to go to because that train doesn't stop at every stop that's in front of you. At least I've noticed that. I've made that mistake plenty of times, gotten on one thinking I was going the right direction, go the wrong direction, get off, walk to the other side, get on the other train, go back the way I'm supposed to go. So it's a fun experience. I would say getting a Suica card or some sort of like train pass, whether that's a JR, like 7-day train pass if you're in the Tokyo area, is a pretty good train pass to get. I think when you go more southwest, it's not as prevalent.
Yeah.
Right? I think JR is more Tokyo area, but super fun. Public transportation in Japan is kind of enjoyable. Like it's not bad at all. It's almost part of the culture of going over there. Some people just want to rent cars the whole time. I think it's more fun to not rent cars and try to get as far as you can using just like the public transportation system.
It's wild. I think I've been on a train like twice in my life.
Yeah, it's a pretty crazy experience.
I mean, again, like it's nice that like, you know, your phone tells you are 4 stops away from your destination. You are 3 stops away from you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that makes it a little bit easier because whenever they're yelling over the speaker or whatever they're announcing over the speaker isn't necessarily.
Yeah, I don't get any of it.
Yeah, exactly.
I kind of panic. I'm always close enough because like I'm confident-ish. You know, it's like I'm still sweating a little bit. Like I don't want to miss my stop. So the train will stop, and Japan does an incredible job with like how they label everything. And you can look outside, and it'll tell you the station number outside, and then it'll have an arrow this way, an arrow this way, and it'll tell you the stations on both sides, so that you can always kind of get a temperature check of like, okay, I have one more stop. My number's 17. This is station 18.
Sure,
Sometimes
okay.
when you read the words, they'll open and close those doors so damn fast that like by the time you get to the station you're trying to read, the train's already going.
Oh my God.
So it's you got to stay on your toes. You've imported a lot of vehicles.
Yeah.
Though
Lots.
in your life. I feel like every time Brian imports a car, he gets a 1/4 inch taller, which is why he's just so
I would be Godzilla.
pretty tall.
If that was the case.
Out of all the cars, we all know that, you know, the Skyline and stuff is obviously the more popular platform lately of import. But has there been a car that you've been seeing globally kind of move around, maybe not even in America, but maybe getting imported into Japan or maybe getting imported into Europe that you've been like, that's kind of a neat car?
Yeah, you know, and maybe I'm seeing this more because I'm tracking them more because there's one sitting in our garage that I've been driving and enjoying. And it's my favorite generation.
Oh, here we go.
Is the roof RT12R. So the 997 base roof cars.
Oh,
So
Okay.
the one that we have currently is a RT12R. So they built 13 of them.
what is it?
Rare, but they built more RT12. So it is, it's a 997 turbo chassis, built on a global or world car chassis. So it can come to the U.S. even though it's a 2012. So it doesn't have to be 25 years old.
Interesting.
Right. And this one that we specifically have is a 720 horsepower twin turbo all-wheel drive manual on carbon ceramics. And
Damn.
the car is incredible, but they did make other base models and stuff of it. So some of the roof cars have been pretty interesting. The 996 generation of them is also available. Those were built on different chassis, but they're 25 years old now. So, you know, some of that kind of stuff we're starting to see move around. The Ferrari 355 Challenge cars are starting to move around a little bit because people are pretty interested in those. So it's not really just Japanese cars, but man, pre-merger AMG stuff right now. So 99 and
Yes.
older AMG stuff right now
Hammers.
is going all over the world for tons of money.
Yeah.
Alpina stuff is picking up a lot. That stuff's moving around. So, you know, the issue that we face and we're running into is that basically all of the cool cars started their end of production in 1999. You know, so you have the Supra that goes to 2002. You've got the R34 that goes to 2002. ARC-7 goes to like 2004. NSX 2005. You know, so you've got some of these cars that are going to run out for sure eventually. So we've put a lot of thought into, like, just hypothetically, I've sold all of the Skylines and there's nothing left to sell. What are we going to do? You know, so starting to look at some of these more world cars, global cars, where it's like maybe there's pre-merger AMG stuff in Japan and we want to bring it to the U.S. Maybe that stuff is more prevalent in the U.S. and some guy in Europe wants it back. Maybe the guy in Europe wants to send it to wherever. So starting to think about, you know, what kind of cars and stuff like that are going to be popular. I mean, like Randy bought a 360 in Japan. Yeah, you know, and that actually didn't even cross my mind. And I was like, well, what are you going to do with it? He's like, it's a 99. And I was just like, that's crazy to think about.
Yeah.
Because it seems like it's a lot newer than that, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a crazy thing. I always look online and you see some of these auctions and you're like, wait a minute. There's like obviously like the standard cool cars, but there's some like interesting stuff kind of all over the place. Like even like the Hilux and seeing some of the Defender stuff and some of the old like Land Cruiser stuff that's like popping around all there. I saw, what was it that I wanted? The Suzuki Jimmy. Have you seen them?
Yeah. Yeah, those are pretty
Yeah.
rad. Those
Those
are
are
pretty
rad.
Those are
Have you seen the people doing the G-Wagon conversions on them?
No.
They're hilarious,
Come
dude.
on.
Hilarious. You can buy a body kit in Japan. Not kidding you, because Masa and we just did this for a customer of ours. bought the full G-Wagon conversion kit to make your Jimny look like a miniature G-Wagon.
So does it go from like a Jimmy to a James, or?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Sir James.
Sir James.
Yeah, but on the topic of cars, real quickly, because I was talking to James Pumphrey today about this, and we were talking about cars that are becoming eligible and cars that are going wherever. And I just threw out for context, do you know in the year 2000, so cars that are available for import now, to the U.S. would be, you're going to see some cool Porsche stuff come up this year, and Noble, and some other kind of random stuff. But in the year 2000, the offerings from the United States that would be eligible now to import to other cars that have 25-year-old rules include the PT Cruiser and the Pontiac Aztek.
Yippee.
So if anyone out there is watching from another country and you dream of owning a PT Cruiser or a Pontiac Aztek, legally we can export to you.
Brian is just literally throwing out lines everywhere just in case, just in case the demand. Just in case
everything all right over there.
Like, I dream of owning a PT Cruiser.
Especially in Europe. Yes.
So PT Cruiser export used to be a huge thing in the United States.
Why?
And they were going to Japan.
Why?
Dude, people were like stancing them out and putting like Kragers on them, flames on the side, ghost flames, all this kind of crazy stuff, and going to Japan. So what's really funny is that sometimes I'll be watching the auctions, just looking at what's available and stuff, and I'll see PT Cruisers or Astrovans and that kind of stuff that all went in droves to Japan.
That's insane.
During that era.
I don't mean to brag, but I used to have a PT Cruiser, and my mom had a Pontiac Aztek, and I didn't know we were sitting on a fucking gold mine.
Dude, you know what?
It.
Like, this is widely known. You could ask any one of my automotive influencer friends what Brian's dream build is.
Yeah, what is it?
And they would know. And I'm surprised you don't know. I might have told you.
PTGT?
Dude, it's the Jay-Z Cruiser, which is a Jay-Z swapped PT Cruiser.
That's not a thing. Where'd you get that?
The Jay-Z Cruiser?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would like to do that. I would also like to build a companion car, which is an HHR 32, where we would RB swap.
So you want an RB HHR in a PT Cruiser, the 2JZ.
The only thing that would make this even worse would be him with the Ford Flex.
Yeah, those are kind of sick, though.
And then we race each other.
I mean, it'd be a good video, but
just imagine I pull up to Texas 2K and just walk you in a PT Cruiser.
If anyone's listening to this and they have a PT Cruiser, I want you to know Brian has like probably one of the best Mark IV Supras on the planet, just like perfectly modded to a T. Drives the piss out of it, and this man wants a PT Cruiser. So just know if
there's no weapon to his head.
I'm telling you right now, if any of you are like, I need to blow a ton of money by the end of the year, let me know. And let's build this for Alex's channel.
Oh my God. No, I will say when I was over in Japan, there's a lot more of that American influence in cars than you would think.
Really?
Like when I was in Osaka, I got to see, I think it was a C6 Z06 Corvette on Volks.
Yep.
And the crowd that was there was going absolutely nutty for this car. The owner was also, got a wildly cool story, but they were just going crazy for this American car. And then we went to Daikoku and we're checking things out. You obviously got the BMWs, and then the droves of import cars. But there were so many people eyeing up these goddamn Challengers and like Scat Packs and 392s and stuff. And people are like, checking this out, and it's still got the bumper cover on it. Obviously, it's got yes, dude. And then the vans have the Kragers, the American torque thrust, like American styled stuff over there goes so crazy.
It's so strange. I get it because you don't see it, but
I was on my last trip to Japan. I was at Daikoku my last night, and a dude pulled through in an AC Cobra, and I was losing my mind because I'm like, that's insane. And then everybody there just like couldn't believe they were seeing this.
Yeah.
And I was like, honestly, that's a pretty insane flex.
Yeah. I told myself it would be so rad to, instead of importing a car from Japan again, export a car to Japan and like drift it at Ibisu, like take a C5 Corvette over there, and then you have like this American muscle car sliding sideways in the sea of like S15s and Chasers and stuff, just because it is such a car that people love. We did interviews with so many people last time we were there, like, what's your dream, car from America? And it's like Corvette, Camaro,
PT Cruiser,
Camaro.
Pontiac Aztek.
And for Brian,
Yeah, I mean,
PT Cruiser.
I'd run it, but yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where I think like you kind of always, there's always gonna be people that want the thing that they weren't able to have that they could see. And, you know, one thing that I see a lot too is I'll go to like a lot of like either little trade show things or swap meets or automotive trade things over there. And there's always people with like a table selling like Infinity badges or Lexus badges, you know, and or Acura badges,
So
you know, which is kind of funny because, you know, I'll be driving around LA and I'll see like an Infinity G35 rebadged as a Skyline.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Be like, dude, you know,
right.
but then I'll be in Japan and I'll see a Skyline rebadged as an Infinity G35
Really?
or G37. And
So
I'm
they
like,
do it reverse over
yeah,
there?
I'm like, I don't know which one's worse. And there's places you can go to
crazy.
buy the badges. They sell them in Japan, you know, so you can go, you know,
so funny.
swap that stuff over, which is pretty funny. We see it on a lot of the Honda NSXs that we import come with Acura badges on them. And people love to swap the badges
Wow.
on. And it's just really weird because you don't think that there would be a reason to do that. But
Yeah.
they do love doing that.
They just
That's
like
so
the
weird.
American culture. Huh?
With that being said, you are unable to swap badges on your Continental tires, which is a sponsor of the MartiniWorks podcast. If you guys and gals are wondering, we are coming into January, which means spring is right around the corner for some of us. So if you haven't bought the Viking Contact 7s, you might be okay without buying them, but that does still mean you need to invest in some good spring tires. DWS06 Pluses, ECS02s, all sorts of good stuff are coming up here in the 2025 season, and Continental's got some new tire sizes coming out in the next couple months, which is pretty rad. We've seen tons of people pick up Continental tires with their wheel and tire packages at MartiniWorks.com. We have yet to hear anybody who said that they didn't absolutely love them. We know their investment. They're not the cheapest, but they are some of the best that you can get out there with a really killer warranty. So we want to say thank you, Continental Tire, for sponsoring the MartiniWorks podcast, and we'll be right back. So Brian is not only a collector of unique cars, distributing them, sharing them with the global audience. He doesn't only do an incredible job at just looking so perfect every single time I see him with his perfectly coiffed hair. He's also a race car driver.
Yeah, a little bit.
Did you guys know this? Did you know this?
I heard a little bit about it when you
doesn't-
came and said hi.
He doesn't race an HHR though.
No, I don't.
Let's set the record
Yet.
straight.
Yet.
Brian, what do you race?
I don't know how you'd even class that. I do race an R32 GTR.
Oh, so
Glutton for punishment.
almost as good as an HHR.
Right.
Nearly.
Almost.
I put it in
nearly.
like the Ford Flex bracket of cars. But what series do you run that in?
Yep. So I've done Global Time Attack and then also a year-long season called Nissan Challenge, which is a challenge. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's a challenge series across, as long as it's a Nissan, you can race it in that series, basically. So it's primarily made up of R35 GTRs,
Dang.
smart people, Zs, the smartest people. Yeah, 370Z, the new Z. 400, whatever you want to
Yeah.
call it.
We
You know what
won't
I'm
talk
talking
about
about.
that.
Yeah,
Z.
the Z thing that came out. And then obviously some 350Zs, stuff like that. And then I'm just out there in a Skyline because
Rad.
you can do it.
Yeah.
Yep.
So what defines a challenge series then?
Yeah, so basically, you're racing against this group of other cars, just like, it's like 8.6 Cup or
Like a Miata Cup kind of thing?
kind of thing
a
like that. Yeah,
spec?
yeah. So you're limited by power, aero, certain things you can't change about the car as it came from the factory. So, the R32 GTR came manual, so I can't just put an auto transmission and go race it. They came that way, so I have to do that. I can't LS swap my R32 or any of that kind of stuff. So you have to retain some of that factory configuration of the car, most of it. And then you could trade certain upgrades for certain things. So, potentially like add 2 pieces of aero, but keep the stock turbo, that kind of stuff. So basically they're limiting the cars, to try to keep everything, fair and consistent. It's not classed by all-wheel drive, rear-wheel drive, front-wheel drive. So you're running it how you choose to run it. And certain tracks have certain advantages for one or the other. So it really does kind of even out. But generally the way it works is you're accumulating points throughout the year. So season starts in February, ends in December. December 15th was my last race. You accumulate points based on your finishes throughout the year, and then if you have the most points, you win.
Winner.
Yeah.
Winner, chicken dinner. And what do you win?
I mean, so I won this year. So that's cool, right?
Jesus, I'm in front of a champion.
But you get, I mean, sponsorship dollars, so
good.
things for next year, or things to help pay for this past year, depending on how you look at it. And then I guess just the opportunity to go do it again.
Did you get a trophy?
Yeah, you get trophies. I mean, you get trophies every race, depending on how you do. And at the end of the year, they do like an event at the end of the year. I think it's coming up in February. They host like a dinner and everybody out for it, and then you get your like actual trophy, and on it has the people who've been before you.
Did you drink out of your shoe?
No,
A shoey
with champagne.
I didn't drink out of my shoe. No, but
next year.
but it's cool. I mean, I started taking racing a little bit more seriously this past year. I went and got my full competition license and started working with a coach and started working more seriously with people that have actual background in racing, and have a couple guys that I work with that are super knowledgeable in racing. One of them is Sean Morris, who used to be the crew chief for the GTR racing team in the United States, so that's super helpful. And then Ernie Fixmer, who is a former D1 driver in Japan, came to the U.S., ran Formula Drift, and is just an expert mechanic. And so between the two of them, we're able to keep the car going and healthy and that kind of stuff all year. And then I just had to focus on driving and learning to be a better driver.
Paid off.
Yeah.
It worked.
Right.
Would you say it's worth it? Everybody wants to race. I mean, that's kind of like a thing. You get a guy in a car and get him into their mid-20s, and you ask them what they want to do with their car, and they're like, I want to race it. But, like, is it actually fun?
I mean, it's honestly, dude, it's when you're on track, it is so much fun.
It's not terrifying.
There's times, I'd
be scared shitless.
Depending on where you're racing, what you're driving, and who's around you, it's terrifying. Nürburgring this year was terrifying. It was
100%
terrifying. But to answer your question, it's a lot of fun. Where it's not fun is like the minute you're done and you have like this sense of like understanding about how much money you just spent to have that kind of fun. You know what I mean? And racing can be either very, very cheap, right? Or it can be insanely expensive. And I think finding the level that you're comfortable with, spending, and whether or not you want to be competitive. I definitely know people that are just like, look it, I just want to go drive around the track and I want to be a part of something. It doesn't matter to me if I win or not. That's how I started. When I started running Challenge Series 3 years ago, I was like, look, I'm going to do this in R32. I have no expectation of winning, and it's just going to be really cool because people are going to be like, oh, there's a GTR on the track.
Right,
that's
right.
really cool, right? That immediately went away. You know what I mean? Because I was like, okay, well, I'm already out here, and I'm spending about the same amount of money to do this as the people who are kind of winning. So, like, why would I spend that money to just not do well? So then it was like, well, how do we get better? And I made a bit of a mistake in thinking that that was going to start with the car. So I did put some money into the car, which the car did need.
Right.
But what actually needed was I needed to get better. So, last year, 2023 season, I put money into the car and not so much time into myself. And I just got absolutely smoked. So this year, I was like, okay, flip that. Stick a little bit of money in the car, and everything else I have is going to go in towards training and experience, whether that's paying a coach or going to a racing school or, whatever I could do to spend time on track. And then that is where I saw the biggest amount of improvement.
So where would you say, obviously people will always say like the best mod is seat time, right? For getting better at being behind the wheel of a car. Out of all the training from the drivers and the coaches and all of that sort of stuff, what has been like the one tip that kind of always sits in the back of your head when you go out there and you race?
I mean, so this was, again, some of this stuff seems super obvious when you say it, and it is not super obvious when you're starting to drive a car. Vision, chin up, eyes out, looking ahead. The further you're looking ahead, the slower everything appears to be happening, right? So your reaction time initially is going to go up. When I first started driving, man, I was just so focused on what was immediately in front of me. The car immediately in front of me. And what I was learning is not good about that is that, one, I don't even know if the guy in front of me is any good. So like maybe he's doing something wrong and I'm just emulating that behavior by trying to follow him. And also if I'm looking at him, I don't know what he's looking at. So he could hit the back of somebody and then I'm just gonna hit the back of him. If I see that he's not paying attention or I see that off in the distance there's an issue, it gives me more time to react. And once I kind of started enforcing this habit of making sure your chin is up, which is like not really, it's again, seems like something so stupid, but it's like not an easy thing to remember, that you're really up, your eyes are up and you're really paying attention across the track. It started making a big difference for me.
Okay. That seems like a good tip. Has there ever been, out of all the tracks you've ever been on, has there been one where it's actually been like, this track might be too much for me?
Oh, dude, Nürburgring.
Yeah.
Immediately. I was on the track for less than 3 minutes, and I was like, "This is a bad idea." It's that track was crazy. It's you could drive there for so long, and still not have. You can just leave feeling like you don't know anything about the track.
It just doesn't seem like it should be its own track with how much you can do on that track. That track is, I will see like the weekly challenge on Gran Turismo or something will be going on. And I'm like, I'll look at that race time and it'll be like, 45 minutes. It's like 5 laps. Like, I can't commit to that. I can't. There's too many turns. I'm gonna mess it up.
Even
I don't
on
want
the sim, the Nürburgring, I'm like, this is too much. I'm like sweating and stuff by the end of it.
It is like mentally exhausting.
And you said it's really rough too, right?
It's no sim prepares you for how rough parts of that
crazy.
track are.
And you just gotta keep going.
You just keep going.
Do they like fix it and patch it, or they just like let it eat?
And I think you just send it.
I think it was is his name Misha?
Misha, that dude is nuts, bro.
So there was one time where Misha he crashed, and I was watching this video because I was so confused because this was this guy who's out there like every day driving every kind of car, doing every kind of driving, very, very confident, very, very good driver. And I'm like, how did he crash? Was it a simple mistake? And he went into discussing how the car that he was in, when it came over one of the hills at the speed and the weight that the car was at, that the suspension essentially like maxed out. That everything was fully compressed, and because everything was fully compressed, the car itself just like lost all of its traction. And so then that started sending me down like a spiral of all the times that this happens at the Nürburgring, which then sent me into a spiral on how much time people will put into their cars just on like suspension adjustments just for the Nürburgring because of how dynamic that entire thing actually is. Like how crazy you have to be to get around those turns.
Yeah, it's it is a trip, dude.
What did you drive?
So I did the first at first in a 991
right at home
911. Yeah. Perfect. So it was a base Carrera.
Yeah, because if you're not a GTR guy, you're a Porsche guy.
Yeah, and then the next day I did an R35 GTR.
How was that?
Yeah. Dude, sketch. Like that car is pretty torquey and pretty fast. And it was really interesting to experience the track first in rear wheel drive and then next in all wheel drive.
Biggest difference, what is it?
I felt a lot more secure in the 911, and I was not expecting that.
Wow, yeah, I would.
Really? Why do you think that is?
I just felt like the 911 just wanted it, dude. Like, and the R35, I've driven the R35 on track plenty of times, right? And it is a great track car, but it is heavy.
Yeah.
So, when you don't know and understand braking zones at the Nürburgring, you feel the weight of that car a lot, and it felt like the 911, despite being definitely the more sketchy car to drive, I think, felt more forgiving around the track than the R35 did.
Makes sense.
If that
Interesting.
makes sense.
No, it does. I think you get really aggressive in braking and acceleration, and the car gets all wobbly on itself, and it starts shooting weight around, and that can be scary as hell.
Yeah.
Especially if you're going into a turn at $120 or something like that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I would really like to bring my own car back that I know and understand very, very well, to Germany. I mean, I was there doing something called German Time Attack Masters. So after that, we went to Lausitzring, and I used the R35 again there, and then I did like a Civic Type R in a front wheel class, which is pretty cool. But to bring my own car there someday, where I like really, really know and understand my car, and go drive those tracks again, in Hockenheim, and see like how everything I've learned about my car transitions into something that is like so dynamic and so crazy, I think would help me gauge very well like where I've come, or how far I've come kind of as a driver.
You mentioned that there's expensive versions of racing,
Yeah.
and then there's cheap versions of racing. What, in your opinion, is the cheapest, most effective form of racing?
Well, I mean, I guess there's lots of different types of racing. I mean, drifting can be very inexpensive, and that is still, I guess, technically racing. Now if you and drag racing can also be very inexpensive depending on what class you want to run. I mean, you can go buy an out the box Hellcat and go drag race it right now, and it costs you nothing other than the car. If you want to road race, that road racing is a little different because there's, depending on the level you want to be at, you have to spec the car that way. So some things just cost money. A roll cage with intrusion bars just costs money. There's not a way to fake that, because it's teched. So, I think that there's stuff that you could do. You could go buy a Miata and you could just run, whatever series is allowing Miatas. But if you want to go run NASA, in Miata, or SCCA Miata Cup, now you have a bunch of rules. And then that car needs to fit that rule book. So it can get, you can't really just say Miatas are cheap to race, because MX-5 Cup is insanely expensive to race.
Yeah, so I learned that from I was talking to Mazda Motorsports guys at PRI with Josh, and we were looking at an ND Miata spec car. We were looking at it and just talking about it. I'm like, cool. It looks effective. Anything too crazy. It's got some wheels, got some tires. That's pretty much it. It's got a roll cage, bunch of the safety goodies, fire suppression. I'm like, how much does this kit kind of cost? And I don't know what I was expecting. $75,000, $70,000, $60,000. He's like, cheaper end, $100,000.
Hell no.
That's the car, dude.
And that's
Crazy.
the car. That's
Now-
not anything else.
Now go run 13 races around the country with it.
No.
Do you know what I mean? And that's where I'm saying it gets expensive.
Crazy.
You look at like, I think a lot of people are pretty familiar with Grid Life. So we'll use that as a reference. If I want to go run GLTC and I want to do the whole series, right? It's very different than doing the whole race. If I just want to do Laguna Seca, right, I can sign up for whatever it is, $1,700 or something, all in to go do it. And then you trailer your car up there yourself and you stay at whatever hotel that's close, and then you show up the next day and you go do that, right? That's one thing, right? But if you want to go do all of them, well, now I have to get it around the whole country, and I can't just go by myself. I have to bring one or two people with me, right? Because if I'm going to be all the way at VIR and something goes wrong with my car, not going to be fun to just be like, I guess I'll just go home, So, and then now you've got flights and transportation costs and food and airfare, and running Grid Life for a whole year probably costs. I loosely did the math, and I'm like, without $100,000,
Yeah.
you're not doing this.
Yeah, most people say
insane.
a good Grid Life series is about 150.
Yeah.
And then a good FD Pro spec is about 175, and then FD Pro is like 300,000, 350,000.
And like,
a year.
honestly, like if you want to go do one of anything, that's fine, right? It's fun. But if you want to like continue to be competitive, or you want to compete in the series, then it doesn't do you any benefit to just do the one. You have to do them all. So, you can start by going to one and being like, is this for me? Yes or no, right? So if you go run one Grid Life here at Road America and you're like, yes, I want to do this. Do it again next year. And then if the answer is still yes, or find another one, then like start looking for the money, you know, and, you know, I'm fortunate that I get a budget through sponsorship from various companies to help me out. I won't plug them on your podcast because I know you got your own people, but there's people that do help me with this, and I'm not paying a lot out of pocket. But even then, they're still out of pocket, you know, on it. So, you know, how much do you like it and how fun is it and what value and what dollar amount do you want to assign to that? You know, I mean,
I will say one thing that I will kind of account to that is sponsors do make the dream work, proverbially, right? They also make the podcast work, right, Dakota?
Yeah, that's true.
And this is my segue into the next sponsor of the MartiniWorks podcast. Dakota, you want to give it away?
Yeah, I've seen some people race on these. Fortunatos,
That's
baby.
right, baby.
And built in the U.S. of A. They come in green. I really like Fortunatos. I have 500s on the Supra, but if you're doing more track day stuff, you can bump them up to the 510s and go up even further from there. They're also customizable. You can send them in to be rebuilt if you need to. They will help you dial them into the exact thing you want to do with your car. So whether you want it to handle great on the street, whether you're going to a certain track on a certain platform, they will help you every step of the way. They're absolutely phenomenal. It was super cool going to talk with those guys and learn about the process and what goes into each and every single coilover. The pieces of paper that come with it that show the little graph, not just for fun, not something just to put on the fridge. It actually is them going through and testing all those tolerances and making sure it's perfect before it gets to you, which is why we love them so much. And we're thankful that they're a sponsor for the MartiniWorks podcast. So if you guys are interested at all in Fortunatos, you can get them over at MartiniWorks.com.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. Breaking news happening out there in the world. We're done talking about Hansan.
Yeah.
That's last week.
Tell me what's going on.
All right. Toyota and Lexus no longer most reliable car maker, says Consumer Reports. I want you guys to guess on what you believe is the most reliable vehicle, because it ain't going to be what you think.
I already know what it is, and I got to clap back for it.
All right.
I feel like because you said it's not what it's going to be like Subaru or something.
It's Subaru.
Well, yeah, because the minority is like the WRX and STI. So I don't know how they pulled that shit off. But.
What I think it is I think all these Subi boys out here are just too sad to fit the stereotype of their car being unreliable, so they don't report them as being unreliable. Oh, no, my car's fine, bro. My car's fine. I just haven't been wanting to drive it lately. It's fine. It's definitely not in the garage broken. I've just been not feeling it lately, and
give it a couple of years, so the reports come back in that they've been sitting in the garage for 3 years rebuilding.
It does feel like comically out of place. Yeah. I'm gonna read the top.
They
10.
paid for that.
1 Subaru,
okay.
2 Lexus, 3 Toyota.
Yeah.
So far so good. 4 Honda, 5 Acura, 6 Mazda. Still okay. 7 Audi's in denial because there's no way that they're reliable. 8 BMW, 9 Kia, and 10 Hyundai.
So I feel like there's like 7 asterisks behind this, and it's like based on cars located in Colorado, driven only during the winter, around blah, blah, blah. Like, you ever see like those, there was just one, it was a Cadillac thing. Sorry, Cadillac, I don't want to burn you here, but like it said best-selling SUV, and I was like, that can't be correct. And then you read the fine print, and it's like best-selling SUV manufactured during the year 2023 to be sold during 2024 that is fully electric, that competes only in this class against these 2 other vehicles that fit within that class. And I was like, so it's the best-selling one out of these 3, and like one of those wasn't produced that year, and the other one's like not technically full EV.
That reminds me of the entire mess that is like the JD Power reports and stuff like that.
There's always a catch.
We've won JD Power 7 years in a row.
Yeah. But you're
because
also
we decided to.
It's the only vehicle in that class.
It's like, oh, okay.
That's
sounds
some BS.
Who do you think's at the bottom of the list?
Jeep.
Oh,
close. 4th bottom.
Oh, okay.
Dang.
I didn't know you actually had
bottom.
it. Who would?
Rivian.
Oh, that's weird.
That seems silly. From the bottom up, Rivian, worst. Then Cadillac, Surprisingly enough, right next to it is GMC, then Jeep, Volkswagen, Tesla, Chevy, Volvo, Genesis, Ford, Nissan, Buick, and now we're back up to Hyundai at 10th.
Interesting.
That's a weird one. Anyway, this is a good one. Brian, this one's for you.
Oh, boy.
All right? I'm going to read off a couple cars off of the coolest cars you can legally import in the U.S. in 2025.
Oh, boy.
I'm going to, you get a ranking system. 10 being import this thing right now.
Yeah.
1 being don't touch that car.
Got
But
it.
you can give absolutely zero context to your reasoning
Okay.
because it's the internet.
Fine.
You ready?
Yeah. Let's go. Run it.
Lotus Exige,
Do it.
Lotus 340R,
No.
Holden Ute SS,
Do it.
Morgan Arrow 8,
No.
Noble M12,
No.
Nissan Stagea 260 RS,
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Audi RS4 Avant,
Yeah.
Renault Clio 2 RS.
No.
That's it. There's not more. That's all I got. I thought there was
Kind of an odd list.
there's only 8. I thought there was gonna be more cars. I'm sorry.
No, it's all right.
I think the cool one out of the whole group is quite honestly the RS4 Avant. That car is
I
so
like
special.
Stagias a lot.
Stagias are rad.
Yeah, I mean those are both good. The Lotus stuff is cool. I mean, and Noble, I guess, is fine. The problem is that Noble is like, who's gonna work on that around here? You know what I mean?
Not in Wisconsin.
Yeah, you know, and I think like that's a horribly unreliable car to get in the first place. So I think if you want to look at it, that's fine. I know there's a dude in Minnesota that has one. It's cool. I mean, they're interesting to see, but they're just like not really that interesting. The other Lotus that you mentioned, I think they only made like
A very few months.
yeah.
I've got another
Very
story, another breaking news story, but I'm gonna try and read it in the person that wrote its tone.
Okay.
The biggest issue with the Nissan Z.
This is just your tone.
Yeah, Alex, why do you sound like Alex?
It's not like you're doing a video.
I can't do accents very well.
No, you can't. All right.
No, they're terrible. So this person writes, the biggest issue with the Nissan Z is they didn't put a fucking number in front of the letter Z. People still refer to it as a 400Z because the new naming convention goes against 50 plus years of history and looks weird when you write it out. It even sounds stupid in conversation. If you're talking about Z models, you can't easily differentiate between it and the other 50 years of Z cars. If you're talking about Miatas, you can say ND or NA. BMWs, you can say E49 or E39. Lockheed Martin fighter planes, you can say F-35 or F-22. But the engine didn't get bigger and you can't go to a smaller number. Nobody cares! Cadillac will sell you an Escalade 600, which is literally the Newton meters of torque rounded up. Who cares? Big number good. Ooga booga. Figure it out, Nissan marketing department. TLDR. Nissan bad, Lockheed Martin good.
I do kind of agree with that. I didn't like the Z name. I also don't like when people say 400Z because that's not the fucking name of it. But I get why people do it.
You had the Proto Z, which was very well defined.
Yeah.
But then you just didn't have anything else after that. And I think like actually the entire Nissan Z campaign from the get was just done so poorly.
It could have been so good.
It could have been really good. And that's why there's Nismos sitting on the showroom floors for, you know, well below MSRP and people can't move them because there's not enough understanding of like what's good about them. And the other thing too is like, you know, as a track car, I know people are starting to do more with them. They have a GT4 program, which is cool and stuff like that. But you can also just go get any Supra for less money and just absolutely mob on that car if that's what you want. You know, the Z, I think it looks nice. I like everything they did with trying to draw in the style cues. It's like, I feel like they spent a lot of time thinking about making the car and spent zero time thinking about selling it.
Yeah, I would agree. When I owned it, I loved the way that it looked. When it was lowered on the ZR10s with the new headlights, I thought it looked awesome. It was a sharp-looking car. I got in it. There were some things that were obviously older Nissan bits. Didn't really mind it. I could get over it. What I could not get over was the price tag and the feeling that I had to spend $10,000 more if I wanted to get it competitive with the thing that they claimed it was going to be competitive against from factory, which is the Supra. Like the Supra
supposed to beat it out the gate.
The Supra has and had that market on lock. You either got a $35,000 GR86 or you got a 55,000 Toyota Supra. There was nothing really in the middle that was, we'll say, tuner. You could go to like a Camaro or something like that, like a 1SS in that 40 region. But like the Nissan was supposed to be the car in between.
Maybe they JD powered us and they were like, well, it is faster out the gate when it's 37 degrees out.
For real.
Dude, I loved that car. Somebody that I spoke with at SEMA, I think, said it perfectly. The Nissan Z will be an incredible third-hand car.
Yeah.
It'll be a great third-hand car.
How hard was it for you to sell yours?
So it didn't take me that long to sell mine at all.
Well, congratulations then. Because, Dustin brought me his to sell.
Oh, I know.
And nobody bought it.
Oh.
And then we dropped it in price. And then I listed it on Car Gurus and all the other kind of stuff and dropped it in price and dropped it in price and dropped it in price until like still nobody wanted the car.
Dang.
Eventually, a dealer out by us, I think Dustin sold it to CarMax. CarMax sold it to a dealer right up the street from us, Buena Park Nissan, and it's still sitting there for sale right now.
No way. Holy crap.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got mine not with any like special deal from Nissan or anything. I had an allocation in from you because you had an allocation in on the Z.
I did reach
and
out.
you didn't want it anymore because you got the Supra. So you passed your allocation
Smart
off to me,
man.
and then I got
It all worked out.
It all worked out. Car modifications from hell.
Oh,
Simple jobs that are supposed to be simple and just simply get worse.
Nissan Z downpipes.
Somebody said their worst job ever was that they went to replace their MAF, but the actual MAF wouldn't come off because the two bolts were stuck. He ended up stripping the bolts, went out and bought a drill and a drill bit extractor. It still didn't work. Tried to remove the intake, needed to remove the battery, spent hours trying to remove the intake, finally removed that to get the screws out, and nothing came out. Gave up, painstakingly reassembled everything, and took it to a dealer to get fixed.
Yeah, that sounds like working on cars every single time I ever touch one.
That's how I feel when you were telling me about how hard it is to replace the taillights in the Supra.
Yeah, dude,
It's
was
not
a
just
nightmare.
you can't just
looking into it. No,
Nyah,
because you got a
nyah,
bunch of proximity sensors and shit in the rear now, and you got to remove the whole bumper on the rear to get to the taillights. It's not like, dude, my Jetta, I can get the taillights out in 30 seconds with my fingers. It's not, well, but speaking of that, like I go to work on the Jetta, it's like I have a Mark IV and I want to make it a little bit nicer. It's getting older, so let's clean up some stuff. I go to touch anything and the bolts fucking disintegrate. And now my entire next 3 weeks are trying to get it back together in one piece because every single plastic tab and bolt broke on it.
Yeah, that's fair.
Man,
I will say
Wisconsin sucks.
the easiest a future project car that we will be talking about that I can't share just yet. We were looking at headlights and taillights and swapping them out. That one right there.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I'm going to get all the tools. I'm going to set everything up. I'm going to take my time because I know how this works. I open up the trunk and I look at the taillight and I'm like, that is held in by a Phillips screw.
That's what I'm talking about.
I'm like, that is all this thing is held. And so then I went on Google and I'm like, okay, how to remove taillight from XYZ. And the video is like 62 seconds long. Not a short, though. It's like 10 years old. And it's like, it's just these 3 Phillips screws, and you just kind of do that. Pop her to the left, kick her out. Just like that. I'm like, this is going to be the greatest freaking build of my entire life. Do you have any mods that were absolutely terrible on your...
Man, I'm doing one right now that is just... It's like another thing after another thing after another thing that I think is just
worst.
Like... kind of done that way because the manufacturer doesn't want you to do it, but my 911 modifying that thing is just like one thing after another. Like I wanted to update the headlights to the 991 headlights. It's a 997, and I wanted to do the GT3 center exit exhaust conversion and stuff on it, and so like it's just exhaust, right? And bumper? No. You also need all the brackets, and then you need the bracket reinforcements for the bumper, and then you need the taillights. But the taillights are actually a different style of taillights, and in order for that taillight to use, you need a different harness. But that harness needs a jumper that connects to the adapter, and in order for it to still work with your little switch, you need a different jumper and adapter for that. But then all those jumpers and adapters need a control module, and that control module needs to go someplace else.
That's
and
where I quit.
There's one place that makes the control module, and they're in Germany, and they're made to order. So you don't know when that's coming, and then it's like, oh, you got to be kidding me. And then, you're like, oh, just let's do the center exit exhaust, and it's like, well, we would do that, but then you got to do these headers, and the headers aren't going to work. And it's just like man, it's been months of like reverse engineering this. And then of course there's always like some guy in the forums that's like, oh man, it's easy. I'm like,
no, if you're that person on the internet, fuck you, okay? Because when you say, oh no, it's easy, you just got to do this.
It's funny because I'm standing underneath my car with a Porsche Tac looking at this, and it is not that easy. You know what I mean? So either you are lying or however you did it was very incorrect. Yeah.
My favorite, back when my wife had a G Series Porsche, I was at 82. It was guards red, black interior. It was awesome. It was terrible to own because the engine was always fucking, there's something wrong with it.
Yep.
And we finally got the head studs taken care of. That was like a $12,000 repair. We got the whole thing fixed. And it was still running really bad. And I remember I had a friend, his name was Jake Ritz, and he came over to help me to just get it to like idle correctly. And I was like, man, I just don't get this car. I'm having difficulty understanding this motor. He's like, dude, don't even worry about it. It's easy. I do this all the time. I'm like, okay. Like, do you need anything? Because he was at my house. And he's like, no, dude, it'll take like an hour. I'm like, what? So I come back, or I like hang out there for the first hour. And I'm like, do you need me to give you like some time? Because I don't want to like distract you or anything. He's like, yeah. He's like, I'll just give me like another hour. I'll be done. I'm like, okay. So I go inside. Hour goes by. Come back out. Still rough. I'm like, you good? He's like, yeah, man, it's easy. It's just kind of being a little difficult. I'm like, all right, okay. You want me to come back? He's like, well, let me come back and work on it next week. I'll get it all figured out. I'm like, okay. Next week comes by. I wasn't even at the house. I just let him in. He worked on it all day. Get a message at the end of the day. Yeah, it's still not running. It's a super easy job, so I don't know why it's taking so long. And I'm like, I don't know why, Jake. I don't know why it's not taking, why it's not so fast either.
Yeah.
It just sometimes happens, man. Some cars are easy. Some cars are Porsches, you know?
Yep.
That's all I got for terrible breaking news today. There are some people getting stuck in factories for VinFast, but I don't really want to bring the mood down, so we're not going to talk about that. Brian, any last thoughts on Honda and Nissan merging that you want to get out to the public?
I don't care.
All right. Well, with that being said, we hope you enjoyed the podcast. Brian, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me again.
We loved having you here. And if you guys are looking to learn a little bit more about what Brian does, Brian, where can they find you?
Well, on Instagram at Brian P. Janish. That's hard to spell, but you'll figure it out. Or Top Rank Importers is our other Instagram handle for the business. Importavehicle.com if you want to go car shopping. Save it to your desktop. Look at it every single day and get what you want. But that's where you can find me. Otherwise, probably hanging out with Alex somewhere.
Oh my God, he's
Japan.
up here. He's up here. Yeah, we're gonna hang out together next month. That's super exciting. Otherwise, I tell Brian every single year that he comes up to visit fam. I'm like, you are going to come by and say hi, Dan.
Yes,
'Cause it's like one of the 3 people that come to this godforsaken state that typically lives in California.
I'm here all the time.
Dakota, anything you want to
add? Brian, I never thought about it, how you said earlier that like you get to a point and you're like, man, we sold every Skyline.
Yeah.
Do you think Skylines will then just keep increasing in price, or are they going to level out once this hype dies out? Because like you said, it's going to get to a point where it's like all of them kind of have been imported.
Yeah. Go buy a 993 Turbo right now.
No.
Let me know how that goes. Go try to get a Rolex right now. You know what I mean? I think the short answer here in the effort of wrapping this up is that, there's not a ton of these cars. I could sell every single one that there is in Japan to the United States. That would still only be a fraction of them ever made because the majority of the cars, I don't personally believe, and I think a lot of experts agree, are not in Japan anymore. Those cars are all over the world. They're in collections with people who are never going to sell them, or it will be generations from now before they sell. Most of the people buying super nice R34 GTRs from me will never, ever need the money back if they sell that car. Gotcha. So those cars aren't going anywhere, and it's a lot like that for the 993 Turbo. They do come up for sale. They're always more expensive than they were. And the people who buy them or the people who own them are not really super eager to let them go.
Interesting.
Well said.
There you go. So don't get yourself a 401k.
Nope.
Get yourself an
dope cars.
Get yourself an R34 GTR and drive your 401k.
Don't drive it.
We hope you guys enjoyed the podcast. Thank you so much for coming along, and we will see you guys next week.